Iran's Revolutionary Guards have said that they have launched attacks against a U.S. military base in Jordan and 21 other targets across the Gulf in retaliation for American strikes around the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the clashes mark one of the largest exchanges of hostilities since Iran and the U.S. agreed to a ceasefire in April. The Iranian strikes, which reportedly included attacks in Kuwait and Bahrain, came after the U.S. military said it had targeted Iranian air defense system, ground control stations, and surveillance radar sites near the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump said that the operation was launched in response to the downing of a U.S. Apache helicopter on Tuesday. And the latest escalation raises fresh doubts about prospects of ending the conflict that began on 20th February when joint U.S.-Israeli strikes targeted Iran. Tehran responded by attacking Gulf neighbors hosting military facilities of the U.S. and by severely disrupting traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global oil and gas shipments. Now, according to a U.S. official, the latest American operation lasted around 4 hours and struck nearly 20 Iranian targets. Iranian state media reported that Keshem Island and the port city of Sirik, both located along the Strait of Hormuz, were among the sites hit. Explosions were also reported near Bandar Abbas and later around Jusk, close to the entrance of the strategic waterway. Now, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has said that they responded by launching long-range missiles at 4 locations inside the U.S. Al-Azraq base in Jordan. According to the Iranian media, the targets included F-35 fighter jets, hangars, and a command and control center. The guards also warned that they were prepared to deliver what they described as a crushing and decisive response to any further U.S. military action. Now, Jordan's armed forces said that they intercepted and destroyed 5 missiles fired from Iran towards Al-Azraq. The military added that debris from the interceptions fell inside Jordanian territory but caused no injuries or damages. Meanwhile, Kuwait's army has said that its air defense systems were engaging hostile aerial targets and urged residents to follow official safety instructions. The statement came after IRG claimed that they had targeted the Ali Al-Salem Air Base with drones. Earlier, the guards also announced drone attacks against the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain and warned of more severe retaliation if hostilities continue. Bahrain's Interior Ministry said that warning sirens were activated and urged residents to seek shelter. And to discuss this further, I'm joined by our esteemed guest this afternoon. I'm joined by Pathikrit Pine, who is a geopolitical expert. Mr. Pine, good afternoon. Thank you for taking our time and joining me over here. I want to begin by asking, what is the trigger for this newly escalated offensive on all sides? Because U.S. is saying that they responded only after the Apache was downed by Iran. Now, was it an accident or was it a deliberate message from Tehran to US? How do you read it? Because earlier we did see how Donald Trump had made a statement saying that it is not Israel that is going to call the shot, but US. And then this unfolds. So is Iranian side trying to give across a befitting reply to the US on that front?
Good afternoon. When it comes to Middle East, it doesn't require a trigger. Such is the mess in Middle East that no one actually can foresee or predict that there will be a ceasefire today or tomorrow. Let me put it this way. Number one, in Middle East, conflicts are far more easier to initiate or start than to finish them. When you have a conflict going on, if you're downing Iranian assets, sometimes your assets will get down too. So if Trump himself would have been very sincere about the ceasefire, he would have ignored certain things. But no, I think all the 3 sides are very, very adamant that they don't want to take a step back. So it is very clear that Trump, even if he wants to have a ceasefire, things are not under his control entirely. Secondly, if you look at what happened yesterday, there are indications, there are allegations by the Iranians that Israel has used air-launched ballistic missiles. Some reports indicate the Israelis may have even used hypersonic missile. which takes the entire conflict into a completely different trajectory. Number three, it is not just the Americans, but even the Israelis and the Iranians have not been sincere so far as this ceasefire proposals are concerned. So if you look at what Iran has been doing, targeting American assets or American bases in many of these Arab states, it shows that neither they nor the Israelis are in any way willing to have some kind of a cessation of conflict. Permanent solution is a long drawn thing. It is certainly not going to happen, because if you look at some of the conditions that America has put forward in terms of asking Iran to give up its nuclear program, hand over the fissile material, uh, enriched uranium, that certainly is not going to happen. If the Iranians expect that the Americans are going to pay for the damage, that's certainly also not going to happen. So every time you see the Americans and the Iranians are on the verge of having some kind of an extension of the ceasefire, some or the other way the Israelis attack Lebanon, and then it becomes a trigger point for the Iranians to launch attacks in Israel, and then it gets retaliated by the Israelis. In between all of this, attacks happen in Strait of Hormuz. When the Americans have attacked some of the ships which were carrying oil, or probably not, oil-laden tankers or tankers for that purpose. Some of them even had Indian, employees and people on board. So you cannot, say that this party is responsible and the other party is innocent. I think there is lack of sincerity from all the segments so far as this conflict cessation is concerned, and therefore I see no future in this cessation. You might see in between some time of a pause, but the conflict will keep on going, which is very, very unfortunate, and it's going to have impact most of other countries, including the countries like India, because of the shock impact when it comes to the price of oil. Back to you.
Obviously, Mr. Pine, but what is very interesting over here, that if Kuwait is returning fire, and does it essentially mean that there is no longer a Gulf state that is neutral? Because whether this is Saudi or UAE, are they also being pushed into this war? Even if they don't want to, they're being compelled to pick a side?
Well, the primary allegation that the Iranians always had is that if you look at the American bases, they are all based in the Arab states. Even the Israeli bombs and the fighter planes, when they go to Iran, they cross through the airspace of the Arab countries. So the Arab countries never actually give any early warning to the Iranians. So the Iranians believe that by their complicity, the Arabs are already involved in this war. So what the Iranians have tried to do is to attack the Arab states where the American bases are there, in terms of pressurizing them to ask America to withdraw the bases, which is again a long drawn call. I don't think the Arab states either want to do that, nor it will be feasible for them. But at the same time, the Arabs probably are also losing their patience. In fact, most of the Arab states are also very uncomfortable with a very powerful Iran. So to presume that they want to be neutral, I think there is somewhere, we have to be very careful, because I don't think they are very much neutral. They may not directly be involved in the conflict, but then they don't mind if the Iranians are cut down to size. Now the problem is, there has been so many attacks by the Iranians that today for them to remain silent will be very, very difficult. So they are, at times countering it by launching their own air defense systems to prevent, thwart the incoming drones, and at the same time, sometimes they might even consider having their own ballistic missile launched towards Iran. So the
To
problem is
Bahrain,
this: there
Mr.
are.
Pine, because US naval headquarters is in Bahrain. Now, if Tehran is trying to target Bahrain, does it mean that the US Navy is at risk?
Well, of course, U.S. Navy is at risk because U.S. is involved in the conflict. That entire region is a contested region. There is volatility. So, if Americans want to have their own version of a block in the Strait of Hormuz, their own assets will be at stake. So, this is a war situation. This is not a peacetime situation where any kind of threat to any asset will be considered as a declaration of war. This is already a war going on. So, if you look at most of the time what the Iranians are targeting, so far as the Arab states are concerned, are the American bases. This is like an indication that if you want peace with Iran, then you have to ask the Americans to withdraw, withdraw from the Arab states, which I don't think is going to happen. That's why you see there are too many subterfuges in the whole proposal of a ceasefire. It's certainly not going to work out. There are too many conditions from both sides, and eventually you would see every time they are on the cusp of some kind of an agreement, some or the other thing happens and everything collapses. And this will continue for quite some time. What happens beyond that, well, it's a very big question mark. But Iran is not a Gaza. Iran is not a Lebanon. Iran is not even an Iraq. It has strategic depth. It has worked in an era of technology denial to work or to develop its own ballistic missile arsenal. It has been severely damaged in this war, but it still has certain amount of capability to keep on, springing surprises, and that's what we are witnessing right
No,
now.
while we
Back to
are
you.
talking about a ceasefire, Mr. Pine, Donald Trump also says that US must respond because Apache was downed. In the meanwhile, Abbas Araghchi also says that no attack or threat is going to go unanswered. Then how can talks, ceasefire conversations, back channel talks and this escalation in offensive go hand in hand?
So this is a classic case of a no peace, no war situation. There is no peace, and both sides are claiming that we are not at war. We will only have proportionate response, which means if you down something of mine, I will down something of yours. And that's why having any kind of a proposal getting executed or culminating it to a kind of a permanent or a semi-permanent solution is a far-fetched thing. And therefore, if there is, Iranians also believe one thing, that there is not much in this ceasefire for them, because even if they look for a ceasefire, the Americans will not stop, the Israelis will not stop looking for the fissile material. Last but not the least, the question that the Iranians keep on asking is that even if we go for cessation of war completely, will the Americans give up on the sanctions that they have imposed on Iran for decades? I think Trump's administration's response has been that they would not give up the sanctions. So if the sanctions don't go away, if the economic woes continue, then Iran, from their perspective, believe that there is not much in it for them to stop the conflict. So they will say that if I can't make business, then I will keep on harming your business as well. And that is why they have been consistently targeting the Arab states, not just the military bases, but but also their critical energy infrastructures, which is the lifeline of the Arab economies. So I don't think in any way conflict is going to end. And also, let's not presume that the Iranians themselves only won the war. A certain amount of a threat, a certain amount of continuity of the war helps the military-industrial complex of the West to keep on selling weapon systems. And so it's a win-win situation probably from both sides. For the Iranians also, so long as the war continues, they can keep on showing that they have not been defeated by the Americans, and the Americans had to ask for a ceasefire. Certainly, the Americans did not go to the war to eventually ask for a ceasefire, which means